6 years after claiming they would never leave a story unfinished, and about 2.5 years since I first uploaded this video on my other channel, Netflix has smartened up and no longer cancels shows before they've— oh wait! Sorry, I misspoke. They not only still cancel shows without endings all the time, the problem is seemingly worse than ever. Does Netflix simply hate TV, or just hate their viewers? They gave us Henry Cavill naked in a bathtub, so that second one can't be true. But then they went ahead and spiked that golden goose into a muddy ditch as well. Instead, Netflix continues to fire hose new content with zero marketing, all dropped in a single evening, and then they're surprised when that show isn't an instantaneously revolutionary hit. This leads to all your favorite shows being cancelled, cheap and profitable reality TV slowly taking over the entire service, and somehow, prices are all still being raised. They are training their audience to never invest their time in new shows when watch time is the singular metric they are using to gauge a show's success. And so I'm left feeling that the problem is that Netflix might not understand their own business model. How's it going, everyone? My name's Graham and welcome to Two Left Frames, a video where a YouTuber does some serious armchair business management. Since December 2022, Netflix has cancelled only 8 series, and 2 of which had the luxury of being granted a second season. They even took a page out of WB Discovery's Necronomicon of bad business decisions to cancel Inside Job after first renewing it. Cartoons on TV need a serious win, but that's an entirely different conversation. Many of these cancelled series had blossoming vocal, niche audiences who, given enough time, could have given these shows the word-of-mouth boost they needed. All it required was an ounce of confidence from the higher-ups. Instead, we have the Netflix co-CEO, Ted Sarandos, rubbing salt in the wound by telling everyone they've never cancelled a successful show. Oh, it's so simple in hindsight. Your bold, creative, artistic project just also needed to be day one profitable on the scale of millions of dollars. Was that not clear when we first picked up your series? In my eyes, the entire point of Netflix's service is to bring in subscribers with exciting new series and movies, and then keep them happily paying for more of that. How do you bring in new subscribers? Interesting looking content. How do you keep existing subscribers? To some extent, new shows and movies, but largely with new seasons of what they already like, and a library of rewatchable content. After canceling nearly every single show, I had to stop and wonder, is it my fault? Did I not get to the new season soon enough to appease the series renewal overlords? No, it's Netflix who's wrong. If you want a detailed breakdown on a network who I believe is doing this the right way, then I would recommend my video on AMC's unconventional approach to picking TV series. That does not seem like a topic that would take 30 minutes to cover, but what they're doing over there is super interesting and is consistently yielding high-quality television that's worth investing in. So if you're into this, then please add that one to your watch list as well. Netflix's complete ineptitude has left me asking these questions about my own viewing habits. How do I pick new shows to watch? How do I recommend shows to others or respond to recommendations? And what justifies or merits a series rewatch? When attempting to break down those problems as anecdotally as I could, I first looked at picking a new series. I look for something that appeals to me in a variety of possible ways, whether that be rooted in intriguing settings, a notable cast, or recognizable creators. Or maybe it's an adaptation of something else I already like. Otherwise, I'm going to wait it out until someone recommends it to me. So how do I handle recommendations on both sides of the coin? I only recommend something new when it's immediately captivating or has had a few seasons to come into its own. If I'm going to sign someone up for many hours of watching something, I want to first know that I'm a big enough fan to want to share that potential investment. There are the odd, immediate sensations like Stranger Things, where everyone was fully willing to dive into this fresh new world, regardless of if we ever got more than that singular season. Part of the appeal of the binge model is that the fanatics can watch the whole thing quickly and report their findings to anyone lagging behind. We all knew within 24 hours that this show was probably worth watching. Shows rarely start that strong. Look at Schitt's Creek. That show found its audience around season 5. just in time to round things out and sweep the Emmys. I have since taken every opportunity I've had to push this show on people, including you, right now. Go watch Schitt's Creek, all of it, twice. But that's coming from me having completed the show and knowing it maintains its quality. People have been recommending that show to me for years. I only watched it now because I had the time with quarantine and a void of endless empty days that went on and on and on and on and on with nothing new. And I heard that the showrunners were choosing to end the show rather than dragging it out into a hollow shell. Getting in right before the final season was a really fun way to enjoy that finale alongside die-hard fans. Everyone's viewing habits are different, but I personally will often re-watch shows I already know I love. And now that I've seen the complete end-to-end Schitt's Creek, I love everything about it. When the day comes I want to rewatch it, I can confidently sit down knowing that the characters' arcs are fulfilled, the story's fully told, and that I will be getting the full experience. Despite being one of the biggest hit shows of all time, I am never going to rewatch Game of Thrones because they didn't bother giving it an ending. You hear me? That show did not end. Discovering an older, already complete series is such a welcome experience. You're finally a part of that conversation. Recommending a complete series is a gift and something to share. Rewatching your old favorites is comforting and nostalgic. Do you know what gives you none of those satisfying sensations? 2+ seasons of an incomplete throwaway show. AKA Netflix's entire catalog. Marco Polo, American Vandal, Santa Clarita Diet, every Marvel series, Glow, Sabrina, and just so many others. Wonderful shows that were either near their end or could have easily been wrapped up in a season if needed. Heck, give it something closer to a special or a movie if it was that close to the end. Sense8 is one of the only times I know of where they responded to fan criticism for cutting things off early and put together a special to finish the series. Even if it's hasty, at least it ended. I truly don't know why they only did that the one time. That actually means that series might be worth getting into, even if it didn't reach its full potential. Now these cancelled, unfinished shows are worthless. Literally worthless. I'm not gonna start Glow because I know it doesn't have an ending. I was waiting for the complete series. Now it has no discovery to be had later in its life, and Netflix should really care about discovery later in a show's life. Similarly, I can't recommend Santa Clarita Diet because I don't want to pass on that disappointing cliffhanger to anyone. And I'm not going to rewatch any of these that I did risk starting for the same reason it's not worth reading the first 3/4 of a book over and over. I guess that's my fault for giving your new show a chance, hey Netflix? In their opinion, I should have watched those first seasons 3 times and recommended it to 9 other people. But guess what? I'm not going to do that when I don't know where the show is headed. All these abandoned series are inflating their service with pointless shows. Something that was buzzy and fun to watch once, but now holds no hope of ever becoming a classic or helping to prop up their service. Every one of those cancelled shows are never going to be talked about. Maybe in 10 years when people come back around and say, wow, I wish that series would have had an ending, too late now. Take a journey with me back to the beginning. Netflix dropped their first original series in 2013 with House of Cards, a show created by an algorithm to be a nearly guaranteed hit early on in the history of at-home streaming. Unfortunately for them, that show now also falls into the unwatchable category, both because they didn't end it on time after 4 seasons with a 52-card deck, as it should have been, but for other more troubling reasons. Early on, it made sense to keep that series running. But as its success continued, it was clear that they cared more about immediate returns than long-term arcs and investment. Dump everything into it until you drive it into the ground. That's been the traditional way of cable, driven by bringing viewers back each week endlessly and shooting for syndication before box sets or on-demand entered the game, and should have fundamentally changed everything, but kinda didn't. Wasting your own show's potential is how it's always been done. It's how our forefathers did it, and it's how our ancestors drawing on cave walls did it. Caveman and Cavewoman really went off the rails after they killed off Ooga. They really should have cancelled that after Cave Wall number 7. It's the same problem Netflix has now with a different symptom. You either drag a show on too long, or cut it off before it hits its prime. Either way, you're creating pulp for immediate consumption rather than a catalog of quality content. One of the main appeals of streaming is your ability to sit at home, binge the hell out of a show, and digest that full experience in as little time as you're comfortable with. Often one sitting. I own all of The Office on DVD because for years that was my only option to experience the full show easily. Whoever holds the streaming rights to that show now immediately gets a huge surge of subscribers because people will pay for it exclusively. Look at what happened with Friends. Netflix had been paying $30 million a year to stream that show. When their contract was coming to an end and the show was leaving the platform, fan outcry on Twitter was so loud that Netflix dropped $100 million to keep that show for just one more year. This mass appeal is true of other classic sitcoms like Seinfeld or Parks and Rec. Unlike those two or Schitt's Creek, The Office did kinda hollow out towards the end, but at least they wrapped it up, and that conclusion was as simple as Michael coming back for a cameo and putting a loose bow on the whole multicam mockumentary premise. It really brought things full circle and felt like an end, even if things were aimless for 2 seasons prior. A marginally satisfying finale is all people really needed. I've also been recently rewatching Scrubs. Again, a classic series that probably went on a bit too long, but it's easy enough to ignore that experimental last season and instead treat season 8 as the end. Without streaming in mind, they were still smart enough to give it that. Easily rewatchable sitcoms are always going to have an important place on streaming for the same reason that endlessly rewatching reruns in syndication was valuable for cable. It plays out a bit differently with big dramas, but having a completed series is just as valuable. I could easily recommend Breaking Bad to every single one of you because it's a complete experience. Hell, I'd even recommend Dexter up to a point. If anyone starting that show wants the full thing, they're welcome to it. At least an end exists, no matter how controversial. Now I need to interrupt myself here because I actually started writing up this video before the announcement of the Dexter revival, and that's provided an entirely new and interesting angle for our conversation. Every network is looking at their catalogs and realizing that the modern streaming model only works if you have complete series, something people can enjoy end to end. Showtime had some stumbles trying to adapt to this new era of television, but now that they've been waiting in the pool for a while, they already learned the 2 crucial lessons that Netflix somehow missed while showing off and doing flips into the deep end. Users are more likely to watch a completed show, and they will never re-watch a show that ends poorly. While Dexter is one of Showtime's all-time biggest shows, it's also one of TV's all-time biggest disappointments. Recognizing this, they're setting the unique precedent of creating a new finale. The actors are back with the original showrunner of the well-loved first 4 seasons. I've seen those first few seasons about twice each, and everything after that just the once. I've never been tempted to come back to any of it until now. This goes with what I was saying before. Rewatching and recommending those first 4 seasons was great. This show had maintained a relatively consistent quality, at least well enough to start telling others it's time to get into the show, and right on the cusp that's when it started to drag, until it was totally unrecognizable, made terrible choices, and went so far into left field that I have no desire to re-experience any of it. But tell you what, if you give me a brand new worthwhile finale, I would legitimately rewatch those first 4 seasons and skip ahead to the new finale just to see what's up. And now that I'm updating this video a few years later and that revival has aired, I can simultaneously laugh and cry at the fact that they made one of the best seasons of Dexter and then gave it an ending as terrible and lame as the last one. It was really good TV and they absolutely fumbled it. So there you go, the legacy of Dexter is still basically dead. I would actually love to do like a 3-hour video someday where I review that entire series, because it's a bit of a wild ride. Looking again at The Office, even if you take a late in the game stumble, with a satisfying ending, I'm willing to forgive a lot. Firefly is maybe one of the only shows I know that is still talked about so highly despite never receiving an ending. We had Serenity, but that movie exists in a gray area at best, far from fully satisfying. Do you want to guess what the vast majority of the conversations about Firefly have been over the years? That the show deserved a renewal with a proper ending. In a weird way, it kind of becomes the exception that proves the rule. There was a time when one of Netflix's biggest sell points was that they would revive and conclude abandoned shows. Arrested Development, Lucifer, Clone Wars. Some of those conclusions are more well received than others, and one of them needed a further conclusion, but it signaled that at one time they saw the value in completed series. But it turns out that they were just going for headlines and impulse subscriptions rather than anything long-lasting. They would also revive and drive shows into the ground, like Trailer Park Boys, miraculously making the same old mistakes of cable in an all-new format. Wowee, what a trick. But hey, people were asking for it and they were providing. I don't think anyone ever expected that show to have a satisfying ending. There's also shows like Kimmy Schmidt that wouldn't have even gotten a first season if it wasn't for Netflix's safety net save everything attitude of the time. Now we've come full circle and networks are out here saving Netflix shows. One Day at a Time is a sitcom that was somehow never recommended to me once, even though I've binged every sitcom ever featured on their platform. A series praised for its handling of more serious topics and both its cultural and LGBT representation. A show that harkens back to an older era of multicam sitcoms, but updates it for a modern audience. How did Netflix not invest in 7 seasons of this and have it be one of their top shows that people binge and recommend for the next 2 decades, like Friends or The Office? NBC is slowly taking all these back, and this show was Netflix's big chance to legitimately compete. 3 seasons in, critically adored, maybe a little marketing shy of truly catching on, and bam, they toss it to the wind. I often see this talked about, but usually without offering up a potential why. There are contractual obligations that raises must be given with the 3rd season of any show. The actors, the writers, the crew, pretty much everyone involved. It really inflates the cost of making these shows. That's why the majority of the cancelled shows are ending after only 2 seasons. And when Netflix is budgeting with that in mind, a new TV show has to be an immediate hit like Stranger Things or The Witcher, or else it's doomed from the start. This sort of short-sighted future accounting is the death of creativity. Dan Levy himself shared this after Schitt's Creek's Emmy sweep. Say that 5 times fast. A gentle reminder that TV shows need time and space to lay foundation, to develop, and to grow. In the wrong hands, this show would have been yanked off the air in season 1 for underperforming. Thank you CBC, Pop TV, for letting us fly. And for the record, it's Pop TV that has now revived One Day at a Time. They know what's up. And somehow Netflix is seemingly getting worse and worse. Canceling the award-winning Dark Crystal Age of Resistance after 1 season is a bummer. Tuca and Birdie felt like the exact sort of show that needed 2 to 3 seasons to properly unfold and find its audience. Cut off before it ever had a chance. But now, canceling the already renewed Glow, not allowing them to wrap up the series, has to be the biggest kick in the teeth. Right now, Netflix is throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, and what is sticking is cheap reality TV. Yet another way they're regressing back to traditional early 2000s cable. Try a little forward thinking. Rather than greenlighting 8,000 new projects and then canceling all of them when they don't see massive immediate returns, because no duh, their model should be more about test runs and full series commitments. The Witcher Season 1 did well? There you go, renew it for 5 more and tell everyone to write and budget the complete series with that in mind. They can then reuse sets, costumes, scripts, etc. and keep costs low. Write up contracts with all of this in mind. They can then plan the rest of the show accordingly without gambling away the future of their series. The whole thing can be made with the creators knowing where the story will end and how long they have to get it there. And the audience can follow along, fully aware that they are investing their time in a show that will actually conclude. So far, the only example of this I know is The Crown. They were immediately told they had 6 seasons because that was the story the creator had in mind. How is that not the norm? That setup means that they can take their time, space things out, film when everyone's available, and get it right. Netflix's execs are out here playing Moneyball, using stats and algorithms to generate, renew, and cancel shows. That works for baseball and investing, but not TV. Where's the human element, the instinct, the passion? I want to circle back to Santa Clarita because that was one of my favorite Netflix series. The premise was weird, the writing had a unique flair, and Barrymore and Oliphant had some of the most natural, enjoyable chemistry I've maybe ever seen on screen. That show had cult classic status written all over it, and the showrunner literally only wanted 2 more seasons to wrap it up and said they would have settled for 1. And now we'll never get naked Oliphant in a bathtub that we deserved. I mean, conclusion. We'll never get the end of the story that we deserve. I cannot believe that Netflix somehow didn't see that value, or in any of the other shows I mentioned for that matter. It's become obvious that all they care about are those immediate returns. And in that way, I'm starting to believe that the higher ups at Netflix might actually hate TV. And if they don't actively hate it, they truly don't enjoy it. How else could they miss these piles of gold right in front of them? Thank you guys for listening to this basically rant of mine. These are fun videos for me to make. It's a big brain dump, but I largely do it because I want to talk about it. Rather than boring people in my real life with an hour of unfiltered thoughts, this seems more appropriate. A huge thank you to patrons of the channel. I always mean it when I say it, but part of me always means it just the tiniest bit more to think that you guys are willing to put up with me just rambling at a microphone for 20 minutes. If you're willing to put up with that, I feel like I can get away with anything. Really though, I genuinely mean that. I love the fact that you guys have given me this freedom to do what I want with this channel. I plan to take full advantage of that in the future. All that goodwill. I'm gonna cash it in immediately. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.